To many, Baal is simply a villain hell-bent on destruction. Reportedly the most reckless and brash of the primevals, Baal revels in utter annihilation, not only of the world around him, but those who dwell in it. On the surface, he appears to be the most base and easiest to comprehend of the primevals, and many have claimed as such.
And that which you seek will not be yours.
Enough! Enough! But in reality, Baal is a complete and utter genius, with even Deckard Cain maintaining that Baal is just as cunning and nefarious as his siblings, quite capable of using strategy and deception to further his goals, which we will see him employ multiple times in this video, and that Baal's power to corrupt has made him previously more powerful than even his brothers.
My brothers will not have died in vain.
Furthermore, an argument can not only be made that Baal will be the first greater evil present during Lilith's reign, but he may be more powerful than ever in Diablo 4.
Shall rule unchallenged.
To see if you share the same conclusion, we must first delve into Baal's own storied history and past that showcases his immutable efforts to adapt, overcome, and eventually be the ultimate destruction of creation itself. Worldstone absconded. During the events of the Eternal Conflict and just before the creation of Sanctuary, the fighting between heaven and hell paused momentarily as Baal had quickly discerned the Worldstone had disappeared, but also the likely culprit. The Eye of Anu, also known as the Worldstone, the object that heaven and hell battled for control of back and forth for millennia, as whomever held sway over the stone controlled the war and creation itself. When the Worldstone was eventually purloined by Mephisto's own daughter Lilith and the rogue angel Inarius so they could create their own sanctuary away from the unending conflict, it was Baal out of the three brothers who then demonstrates that unlike his namesake of destruction, he is happy to torture and use deception or more subtle if not violent methods to extract information from errant angels that he caught.
Enough of your idle speculation, Mephisto. I breached the fortress and saw it firsthand. The Worldstone is gone. The angels I killed knew nothing about it. But since you are so perceptive, maybe you remember who else has been missing. Lilith. We must find her. Rip her limb from limb. Take the Worldstone back.
The dreams return, but these were clearly not my own. I beheld a vision of a great man, the mage Talrasha.
Soulstone doomed. During the exile of the greater evils, all three were captured and contained in Soulstones by the Horodrim, including Baal himself. Over the course of a battle outside of Lut Gholein, the Soulstone meant to contain Baal was splintered, some say by Baal himself, others pose that it was the Horodrim, particularly Zoltan Kulle, who handled it poorly and thus led to it breaking. However, as we know, destruction is Baal's forte, and the exile was orchestrated by the evils themselves. Baal was then drawn into the Soulstone's largest shard, but it was clear that it couldn't contain him forever, and thus Talrasha became a surrogate to contain Baal on the binding stone in his tomb. What is more impressive is that unlike his brothers, who used their more subtle influence of hate and terror respectively to permeate into the surrounding regions and peoples therein, Baal managed to corrupt his Soulstone directly and later use its newly imbued attributes of destruction to dire effects directly on the Worldstone, taking advantage of and turning the stone's greatest strengths and subsequently all of his opposition's tactics against them.
I know that the better part of my soul will remain behind. Forever.
Give it to me, Marius.
Take it. Take it, take it. I'm glad this is finally over, Tyrael. Look what the stone has done to me.
Deceptions of Marius. To speak further to Deckard Cain's assertion in the Book of Cain that BAAL is not reckless and brash as previously believed, the most direct confirmation of this and BAAL's subtle machinations are largely seen during the events of Diablo 2 and its expansion. First, in a display of raw power, he corrupts his Soulstone shard, then tricks Marius, versus outright killing him, in the ruse of Tal Rasha to have himself freed. Finally, he masquerades as Tyrael to obtain his Soulstone before disposing of poor hapless Marius, a pawn in his grand scheme.
Fool! You have just ensured the doom of this world. You cannot even begin to imagine what you've set in motion this day.
I have walked the earth, always searching for that which will make me whole. High in the mountains of Kyloran, deep within Mount Ariat, lies that thing.
Waltz up to the Worldstone. Furthermore, once BAAL had reclaimed his lost Soulstone shard, he displayed even greater power than his brothers whilst it was in his possession. BAAL travelled north, butchering entire villages en route to Mount Ariat. Those who were slain were possessed and transformed into demonic soldiers. Every act of destruction committed by BAAL and his minions increased the shard's power. Thus, rather than approach Mount Ariat through stealth, BAAL's approach meant that the Soulstone, now named the Shard of Destruction, pulsed with untold corruptive energies. Additionally, he summoned a legion of demons to his side that reveled in destruction and chaos. BAAL swore that his brothers would not have died in vain and that he would rule unchallenged. Reaching the gates of Sescheron, the barbarians attempted a parley with the demon, but BAAL casually killed the emissary and ordered his forces to attack. Soon, all that stood between BAAL and the Ariat summit was Haragath. To stave off BAAL's assault, the Council of Enders sacrificed themselves to enact a warding spell to keep BAAL's forces at bay. Nonetheless, BAAL's forces laid siege to the fortress. The defenders of the Worldstone were betrayed by the elder Nilathak, the only survivor of the warding spell. Believing his people would be doomed unless he negotiated a pact with BAAL, he provided the Lord of Destruction with a relic of the Ancients in exchange for sparing Haragath. By foregoing short-sighted wanton decimation of a peoples for his own pleasure, in favour of attaining his master goal.
Well, it seems your terms are not acceptable. And I shall rule unchallenged.
With the relic in hand, BAAL raced up the slopes of the mountain, able to bypass the mountain's guardians, which were Nephilim themselves, thanks to the relic, again showcasing his intelligence. In the Worldstone chamber, BAAL fused the Shard of Destruction with the Worldstone. All of the strife and horror that had accumulated within the shard began to spread throughout the gargantuan crystal. BAAL, the only of the evils to literally assert dominance over the stone itself and therefore dominating the greatest known artifact of creation in existence. And even when BAAL was destroyed, he technically still wins, as his corruption was so great the forces of heaven could not even cleanse the stone and were forced to destroy the very thing that created sanctuary.
We've done it! Quickly now, Leah. Trap Azmodan's essence within the Soul Stone.
It's done!
I never dared dream. All evil lies trapped within that stone. Once it is destroyed, the eternal conflict will finally end.
Destroying the stone is no simple matter. There are rituals to consider. We must return to the keep and make our final preparations.
Adria the Witch once speculated what might happen if BAAL succeeded in reducing heaven and sanctuary to ash. Would he destroy hell likewise? Would he destroy himself, or was he clever enough to ensure that such a thing never came to pass, embracing defeat, death, and rebirth, lest his cycle of annihilation be jeopardized? However, it seems Adria firsthand found out that BAAL possessed enough foresight to know that his ultimate goal in its purest form wasn't unending destruction and rebirth, but a total annihilation of existence itself. BAAL's essence actually ended up in the Black Soul Stone during the events of Diablo 3, as per the machinations of Adria. He was the third of the great evils to be marked, coming after Andariel and Juriel. When Adria came across the remains of BAAL's spirit, she discovered that, like Juriel, he yearned to bring about the end of days. He quickly learnt the truth of Diablo's plan to use his essence to become a singular prime evil, and that Adria was imprisoning him until that day came to pass. However, to Adria's surprise, BAAL didn't lash out, but rather felt something close to amusement from him, in which she wrote directly on the imprisonment of BAAL in the Book of Adria. The power of destruction is not an easily controlled thing. My ritual did not attempt to do so. The central rune, carved into a human jawbone, amplified BAAL's power, but the outer runes anchored it within the circle. I could feel a moment of pure satisfaction racing through his spirit, for the spell made him feel as if he just inhabited a new host body. He quickly understood the truth, that I was imprisoning him until my master could make use of his spirit, but he did not lash out as I expected. I felt something close to amusement from him. I did not understand, but perhaps it is impossible to understand the ways of the greater evils. 20 years after his defeat at Ariat, that day came to pass, and BAAL briefly merged with Diablo as a single prime evil. However, Diablo was defeated by a new hero, and the great evils were drawn back into the Black Soul Stone, their souls screaming for release, but heaven could not hold the stone due to its corruptive power, which makes me question if BAAL, like his own Shard of Destruction, was already asserting his corruptive power over the stone and heaven itself. Later, because of Malthael, the stone was destroyed, and Diablo was freed, still retaining the essences of the other evils. However, while we know that in Diablo 4 it is confirmed Lilith will be the main antagonist thus far, we know that some of the other evils must have broken free, as Juriel and Andariel will make confirmed appearances in-game, showing the lesser evils at least are present in Sanctuary. I believe with BAAL's own direct disdain for Lilith and her stealing of the World Stone and creation of Sanctuary and her bastard children the Nephilim, which if this video has highlighted anything is that all creation flies in the face of BAAL's fervent desire for destruction. Lilith's reign would be a perfect breeding ground for BAAL to sow further dissonance on Sanctuary. Whether seen in a tangible form or not, BAAL may choose to inhabit one of the many shards of the World Stone, again scattered around the world, which would corrupting the amassed bounty of World Stone fragments further, as the story of Diablo Immortal is set to explore, and nefariously could choose a powerful host to attain their powers, as he was delighted to believe that was how he'd return at Adria's hands. And as previously seen, Rasha added a boon to his formidable masonry, but if embedded with a Shard of Destruction, what untold powers would be bestowed upon BAAL? Would he choose to reform as just a demon, or would he innately hunt down a more powerful body and attempt to control a Nephilim with its unimaginable power corrupted by the Lord of Destruction himself?
I saw the Nephilim in a new light. He is a hero who can defeat the champions of heaven and hell, and a barbarian who protects the innocent. But within him beats a mortal heart that will one day be tempted to corruption. On that day, will he have the strength to resist, or will he be